Hi guys, Sarah Picaro. Today's video is going to be about attachment styles, how your attachment style affects your relationships, especially the fearful avoidant or what's otherwise known as disorganized attachment styles, and how your childhood attachment style affects your adult relationships. So if you have noticed some chaos or turmoil in your relationships, more than likely it has to do with what your attachment style is. So today in this video, we're going to be going over what is disorganized attachment, what is disorganized attachment in adults, because you may not feel that you were as a child, but now you're noticing you're kind of all over the place and wondering what it is, what the characteristics of this thing called disorganized attachment styles are, or fearful attachment styles. You may be thinking, I'm not fearful in relationships. I love being in relationships. So we're going to dive into how do you know if you have disorganized attachment or fearful attachment and what they look like in relationships. So remember, before we get into this too, like, share, subscribe, and comment to learn more. So let's get into it. What are fearful and avoidant attachment styles? Well, people with strong fearful avoidant attachment tendencies, we're going to go over 6 things that they do and get even more into understanding this and how it may be impacting or affecting you. So people with fearful avoidant attachment tendencies or styles or disorganized attachments can strongly fear being used in relationships. They can have a strong fear of being betrayed in relationships, especially if they've been hurt in past relationships or in emotionally unavailable or emotionally abusive relationships in the past, relationships with narcissists in the past. Getting into a new relationship may be their strongest desire, but they can also strongly fear being used in relationships. They can fear being betrayed or exploited in their relationships, because especially when it comes to being in relationships with narcissists, this is what they did. They used people, they exploited them, they made them very, very, very afraid and uncomfortable. I'm going to adjust this really quick. There we go. So another key component of fearful attachment styles or disorganized attachments is when people are in them, they begin to pull away. They begin to disconnect from the relationship when they start to feel rejected or overwhelmed. And they can begin to feel rejected or overwhelmed very quickly, depending on what is happening, how fast the relationship is moving, what their feelings are for this person. And when they begin to feel rejected or overwhelmed, they will begin to pull away from relationships. And this may come up in very innocent situations where the other partner is very busy at work, they have a lot going on, and so they can't contact and reach out to them as much. So maybe they don't call or text or message them as much. And that triggers a feeling of rejection and overwhelm in the party with the disorganized attachment style or the fearful avoidant attachment style. And they say, oh my gosh, well, I'm done. I might as well just end this. And they begin to pull away from the relationship, even though the relationship is still going well, even though it's still strong, even though it's still healthy. Any trigger or feeling of rejection or overwhelm, they might begin to create stories in their head about what that other person is doing or who they're with, based upon experiences from the past that they're still projecting onto this relationship. So then they begin to pull away. People with fearful avoidant attachment tendencies or styles can be very deeply empathetic people, and they can be highly tuned into the needs of others. This is not always a bad thing, but it can lead to that feeling of overwhelm and rejection when they take on too much. When they are so deeply empathetic, they begin to step into that person's space and try to become the fixers and take care of their struggles and their problems for them. So they get overwhelmed themselves by taking on too much because they're highly tuned into the needs of other people. They can see and feel what the other partner in the relationship wants or needs, and oftentimes will cross their own boundary and their own line of stepping into that space and trying to do that for them. And in that, losing sight of and losing connection with themselves. So it gets off balance really easily. People who have disorganized attachment styles can often crave emotional intimacy. I mean, there's all kinds of intimacy, but they have a deep longing and craving for emotional intimacy, but simultaneously So at the same time, they have this deep craving and longing for emotional intimacy. They can feel mistrustful of others. So you can see the disorganization there. They have a deep need for this emotional intimacy and really getting to know people because they deeply are tuned into their needs, but then they also at the same time feel mistrustful of others. So that's that fearful avoidance and this disorganization, this chaos that they struggle with. And they have a combination, if you know anything about attachment styles, people with fearful avoidant or disorganized have a combination of avoidant and anxious. And that shows up depending on the relationship, depending on who they're with. So there is a combination of anxious and there's a combination of avoidant. So you can see how it gets disorganized and chaotic. And they oftentimes don't have any idea where they're at or what they're feeling because it is a combination of both. So that leads to them feeling anxious, feeling helpless when they begin to fall in love or when they begin to fall for someone in the relationship, depending on that someone, right? Depending on that someone's attachment styles as well. But when they begin to really, really fall for this person, they begin to feel anxious and helpless. So all of those fears seem to come to and rise to the surface. So not bad news for people with fearful attachment styles or tendencies or disorganized, because when people with these types of attachment styles have a safe space to process what they're going through, a safe container when they're in a healthy relationship, it can be beautifully healing because when there is this sacred and safe space held for these people, or not these people, that sounds horrible, for people with these types of attachment styles, um, to understand their conflict and their fears, then they begin to heal them because you need to feel them in order to heal them. And that is where, doing the inner work to healing, whether it's through the program that we have running, Transforming Past Pain to Present Power, or one-to-one work together to really get to the core and the root of understanding your attachment styles and where they came from, because they all stemmed from and were developed in childhood. The attachment that you had with a caregiver or parent developed and created the attachment that you now have when it comes to interacting with the adults in your life. With that said, there is so much to be said about diving into that space of where this came from, how this was developed, your first attachments and relationships to your caregivers, because people who resonate with a disorganized attachment style or fearful avoidant attachments, those are more than likely people who had a caregiver who was very abusive, emotionally unavailable. I talk a lot about childhood emotional neglect. That was often present, who were very intrusive or who were very highly mistuned. They were just completely not tuned into the child when they were growing up, when they were developing. So rather than you as a younger version of you or you as a child feeling safe to reach out and connect with the caregiver, you were often afraid of what their response was going to be or unsure of the response and therefore held back. So you were afraid of asking for help or afraid of connection because you didn't know what you were going to get in return or in response. And parents who have unresolved losses or traumas sometimes, sadly and unknowingly, pass on these traumatic or frightening behaviors onto their child. So a parent with a fearful avoidant attachment style or a disorganized attachment style kind of passes the baton of that same attachment style to the child. And now that child may be you, but an adult version of you. So families who experience generational trauma may identify with this attachment style, but it doesn't have to be the end of your life, even though it may be what was presented in the beginning. As long as you're willing to take the necessary steps and do the inner work, you can change that and you can transform it to one of a secure attachment style. But that's not just, hoping that it happens that way. You do need to put in work and effort in order to get to that place. So with that said, a little bit more background and information on that. When parents are our original caregivers, our OCGs, our OGs, we learn so much from what is modeled from them. And we often take that on. We take it on as something is wrong with us. If we feel afraid to reach out and attach, or if we're not secure in our relationship with them, we take that on, and then that's something that we carry throughout our early adult lives and then into our later adult lives. When a parent is so misattuned and so intrusive, it leaves the child feeling confused, feeling overwhelmed, feeling afraid, because naturally a child wants to go to their parent, wants to connect with their parent, wants to feel loved, appreciated by their parent. And when there's a lot of fear based in that relationship, it completely alters the attachment style and the beliefs that that child has about themselves. Children need to be bonded with their caregivers and with their parents in order to survive. Yet staying bonded to an unpredictable caregiver or parent, or a very intrusive one, can cause children to begin to disassociate and disconnect from themselves early on. And then they learn that as a coping mechanism, as a protective mechanism, as a survival mechanism. So people who have strong, fearful, avoidant tendencies can have a combination of anxious and avoidant tendencies, because obviously that's not a comfortable, safe, or a good feeling. So you want to pull away from that. But pulling away from that creates this anxiety and this fear of, I've got to make it. It's up to me. I'm on my own. No one is there to support me, love me, care for me, or teach me. And I have no one to go to. But knowing I can't make it on my own, but I'm on my own. So there's that disconnection, the disassociation, and the anxiety that comes with that. So these are people who often deeply and genuinely crave connection. That's why they can be deeply empathetic and tuned into the needs of others, because they feel that it shouldn't be that way. And they can see that caregiver's internal conflict and struggle and chaos and want to do something about it. And they crave that closeness, which is really different from the dismissive type, but they tend to experience high levels of anxiety when they begin to depend on or begin to fall in love with someone. That's later on in life, because the original person, the OCGs, the original caregivers, you love your parents. You may not be in love with them the way that you're in love with a partner as an adult, but you love them. You have a deep connection and love for them. And when that feeling of deep love and connection resurfaces in adult relationships, those same fears resurface along with it. Does that make sense? So leave some comments if you're following along and that makes sense. And that can be because the very, very painful memories of the past begin to come up, begin to resurface just as they start to feel safe with someone, because they began to feel safe with that avoidant parent or with the disorganized parent, and then they became hurt. And the mind says, I don't want you to be hurt again. Let's not go down this road again. But you're thinking, but I want to, because I want to be in love and I really enjoyed this person, but they're going to hurt me. And so the fears tend to resurface as you go down that road again. So then, in order to avoid feeling hurt emotionally and having your heart broken and shattered and ripped open again, the way it felt like it was when you were a child and you couldn't connect in a healthy way with that parent, your mind says, don't do this. And so you begin to pull away and feel fear and feel rejection and intense feelings of anxiety when you get into this relationship. So if you resonate with any of this, understand there are deep inner wounds that need healing before you're ever going to get to that place where you feel secure within relationships. And this does not take years and years and years of therapy. Trust me, majority of people that I work with have this attachment style, and going through this, getting to the core and the root of it using transformational therapy at the unconscious level, you can heal much more quickly than you would think it would take. Just because maybe you're 30, 40 now, and obviously these attachment styles were developed in childhood, it does not mean that it's going to take another 30 or 40 years to get to a secure attachment style. So please, please, please know that, because that's a misbelief out there. A common misbelief is, oh my gosh, it's going to take forever to heal, which is absolutely not true. So if you are someone who has high avoidance and high anxiety in relationships, and you feel that you have ruined past relationships because of this, and you're ready to change that because you're sick and tired of doing that, and you're ready to do the inner work, to healing, to reconnecting, to feeling safe within yourself and safe within relationships, and move from that fearful, disorganized, anxious, and avoidant attachment style to one that's much more secure. It begins with doing the inner work to healing and feeling secure within yourself and developing a healthy relationship and attachment style with trusting yourself again. So that's the journey that we go on, because everything internally reflects externally. So if you feel safe and secure within yourself, and you have a healthy attachment style and relationship within yourself, then that is going to be projected and portrayed outward and reflect in your external relationships. So anything that you want want to experience externally, you've got to begin by healing what it is internally that keeps you from experiencing that. So that is exactly what we do inside of our Transforming Past Pain to Present Power program. If you're interested in taking it into an even deeper level and doing the one-to-one work through transformational healing sessions, I would love to talk to you more about that, because we are put here to experience healthy relationships and connections. And it doesn't just have to be an intimate relationship where you experiencing healing. Majority of the times you experiencing you experiencing being triggered. And yes, people can heal within a relationship, but it takes two willing people and two aware of, and people who are willing to do the work on themselves and use that relationship as a safe vessel and space to do so. But oftentimes it doesn't get to that point, and then you can feel like the relationship ends up being ruined. It can lead to divorce, it can lead to heartache and heartbreak. If you're tired of that, it's time to repair, time to heal, time to realign, time to reconnect with yourself. So I would love to guide you on that journey. You can find more information in the links using the description links below this video. So make sure to check those out below. And until then, be well.